Okay, today we are going to learn how to loom knit this cabled headband, the X's and O's headband. It has offsetting cables and is run through with elastic, decorative elastic. Of course, it is wide enough for an ear warmer, or it can just be worn as a headband. This video tutorial is to demonstrate how to work the pattern in the classic way of doing cables with one stitch per peg. So let's get started. First, we will need our 32 peg small loom authentic knitting board. We will need our yarn. The pattern calls for Line Brand Yarns Woolies. We are using the color Blush Heather. It is a 4-weight yarn that is 80% acrylic and 20% wool. Also be needing what is called decorative fold-over elastic. Now, different brands make different. Some come on spools, some are on cards that are wrapped around the card. But the reason they call it fold-over, they will all have that, looks like a little indentation right there, so it could be folded over, but we're not going to. You can get them in solid colors or other types of decorative designs. You will need 1.5 yards of this to make one headband. Also need your loom pick, a tapestry needle to weave in your ends, and also what is called a cable needle. Now, if you don't have a cable needle, fear not, you can use something like an open safety pin. But if you're afraid you're going to stick yourself with that, I like to use, in a pinch, an opened up paper clip. You will also need some sewing thread. This will be for sewing your elastic. So some sewing thread, it can be little spools or whatever, even from like a mending kit. And also a sewing needle. Now let's get started. Okay, on this video, we are going to learn how to use the peg sharing system so that each peg will hold more than one stitch. It makes it a lot easier when you are working cables and doing other type of patterns, like say chevrons, where you have to do increases, decreases, or in this case, moving stitches and crossing them. Some people will call it the peg doubling. To me, it's not quite as accurate because you're not actually doubling your pegs, but you are doubling your number of stitches by the pegs sharing more than one stitch. So you can also make bigger things as well on smaller looms and things like that. But for today, we are learning how to do cables. So we're going to get started. This one that I keep pointing at is going to be my peg 1. So I'm going to put a little stitch marker on it, and we're going to count over. We are going to need to cast on 19 stitches. So if this is going to be 1, we're just going to put 1 on the first one, and then we're going to do 2. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. This one's going to be where I am going just for where I can keep up with where it's at, because it really doesn't matter. But for casting on, this is pegs we will need to cast on. So I'm going to take my yarn. I am going to make a slip knot. Different people make slip knots in different ways. Use whichever one's most comfortable for you. Now, I don't like, you can put your slip knot on that last peg. And when I call this the last peg, because we are going to be casting on in this direction, so that when we're cast on, we will start with peg 1 over here. But I don't like knots in my work. I'll focus. There we go. I'm going to put it over here. That's going to be an anchor. Now then, I'm just going to bring it over. We're just going to do an E-wrap cast on. You can still do whatever cast ons you like on this, but for this project, at the end doesn't really matter, so I'm just using an E-wrap. So that would be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Now, we are cast on, we are ready to work row 1. Row 1, you will have to move 1 stitch to the other. Now, this is why, to work any of the rows, you will be moving stitches over as you work. It is better to go ahead and just use the true knit stitch, because you're going to be moving those stitches anyway. So, okay, so the first stitch is a purl, so we're going to purl, put that back on. Now then we are going to knit 8. Now, the only tricky part is pushing that one down. You're going to, that was 1, and move that over to here. And then 2. We're going to leave this one here. Then 3. It takes a while to get used to, but once you do, it won't, I mean, it's just like anything else, just getting the, getting into the rhythm of doing something new. I'm sorry, let me center that back up. So that was 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Leave that one there. Scoot that one down. 5. Move that one over. 6. 2 more. 7. And 8. Now then, we will repeat, because if you look at the pattern, then you've got a repeat from the asterisk, which means we will go back to the first, and we will do a purl 1 and then a knit 8 one more time. Go ahead and move that over and then knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then sometimes it helps just to move that yarn over while you get your pick in there. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we see from our pattern we will need to do one more purl with that last stitch. Now, once you get that last stitch purled, then you can take that off the anchor peg over there and let it be. Now then, row 2 will be going back this direction in the same manner as row 1. So we repeat row 1. So we will purl that first stitch, then we will knit 8. It's exactly the same, but moving the stitches back over the other way. So we will just continue like we did with row 1, and we'll meet back up at the end. Now that I'm back over here to peg 1, then I will purl that last one, and then I will be ready for row 3. Row 3 is a cable row. So this will be where we learn about how to work our cables with more than one stitch on each peg. Okay, so we purl that first one again. Now then, we know that if we're going this direction, each stitch on the peg goes in order. So this would be like 1, 2, 3, 4. So stitch 1, stitch 2, stitch 3, stitch 4 for our cable. The first one we are going to do is a cable 4 back. Now, in order to work the cable 4 back, it is worked over those 4 stitches, and you will put the first and second stitch on your cable needle using my handy dandy paper clip. We'll put 1 and then 2. And we're going to hold it to the back. Now then, we're going to take our working yarn behind peg 1, and we are going to knit 3 and 4, and as we knit them, we're going to move them over here. So, and also, if there's needing to be any tightening whatsoever, not as much, since we're not doing it the traditional way, we're doing it the peg sharing way, then there's no, not as much need to tighten up stitches. So that was 3 moved to this peg, and 4 moved to this peg. Now then, we are going to place these stitches back on. So this one, let's move our working yarn out of the way. Actually, it needs to go back this direction. We'll put this one on, and then this one. And that way they are in the same order as they were when we took them off. Now then, this is going to be an instant where we're going to end up with more than one stitch on a peg. And that's okay. So, see, this comes from that stitch. We are going to knit this one. So it was the first one. It became now the third one. And we're just going to go ahead and slide that one over here onto here. And then we are going to knit this one. Now then, there we go. That is your first cable 4 back. Now immediately next is our cable 4 front on these next 4 stitches. Now, so you've got stitch 1, stitch 2, stitch 3, stitch 4. So it tells us to go behind those 2 stitches and then knit the third, place it on the cable needle, and then the fourth, and then we will place it on the cable needle as well. And then we're going to hold it to the back, and we're going to come around here to the back of, we're going to bring our working yarn around to the back. Now then, this one was peg one, would have been stitch 1. You need to knit it, but put it over here for the moment. Knit this one, and then we are going to put them on this peg. So we're going to knit this one, then we're going to pick up that one. But this one goes first, and that one goes second, because we're still trying to keep them in order. The last one that was knit goes on top. So see, this one's the one that was knit last. It goes on top. That way when you're coming back from the other direction. And then these were the ones that were already knit. We are going to place them on this peg here. So we are going to grab that one, and we're going to place it on top of this one just for the moment, because this one was the first one knit, so it needs to go on the peg first. So place that on the peg, and then move this one over on top, because those were the order that they were knit in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we are going to make sure that those are snugged up just by tugging on them, because this is really the only time you need to make sure your stitches, in the order that they're knit, snug them up, and then there. That is your cable for front. See? Now then, we are going to purl the next stitch. Well, and then you're wondering, where am I going to put it? Well, this is one of those times you are going to have 3 on one peg, and that is fun. Because, it's like with needles. When you're knitting with needles, you've got 2 needles if they're straight needles. Of course, you've got, if you're using double points, there's more. But they're sharing. They're all sharing the stitches. Well, in this case, we are going to turn our pegs, instead of just holding one at a time, into sharing more than one stitch, like needles. Okay, so now then, we've purled that one, and then we have got a cable for front again. So what we will do, in order to skip those, we will move that one over to here. We will skip them. We will knit the third stitch, place it on the cable needle, and the fourth stitch, place it on the cable needle, now then, we are going to come back, keep that to the back. Sometimes it doesn't want to stay there. We're going to go ahead and move this one back over, because this one's got to be knit first. Now then, plain nice little cable needle. We're going to come all the way back around. We are going to knit first or the second. Okay, now then, we've got the third one knit and the fourth one. Now to get them both on this peg, we will need to move this first one and put it becomes the third, and then the second, which becomes the fourth, because it was the fourth one knitted. Then we take that one. I got it a little bit tight. We're going to put it, for the moment, just to hold it, on this peg with those, and then, see, I didn't get the cable needle all the way through all the, then this one will go here. Then let's go ahead and move this last one. This was 4, it's now stitch 2 back on top of here. Now I know this sounds confusing, but once you get into the rhythm of it, you know, you get into that pattern of getting it done. So then we kind of, you know, even out our tension on this. That one didn't need much because we didn't want that one being tight, and then this top one here. But it will become second nature. Just keep on and just give it a chance. Now then, our next one is the cable for back. So on this one, we will find the wayward cable needle. We will put the first and second stitches on our cable needle. Hold it to the back. Bring our working yarn between the cable needle and the peg. And then we are going to knit the third and move it over to become peg the first. And then we're going to knit the fourth. And we are going to move it over to become the second. Tighten those up as you go, because you will always tighten up stitches on the back for the cable for back. You will tighten them as you go. The cable for front, you tighten them at the end. So since this was the last one knitted, we haven't knit these two. Put that working yarn between those pegs. Now then, we will put these back on in the order that they are. So that one was 2. It has now become 4. This one was 1. Now becomes 3. Now you will knit this one. You will move it to this peg, so there's 3 on it, and then you will knit this last one, and then of course the very last one is a purl. Now then, we will return for rows 4 through 6 are the same as row 1, but since we have, I'll go ahead and help demonstrate how we're going to do this, since we've got multiple ones, so that each time you knit the next row, you will still end up with the 2 on there. So we will, though this is row 4, which is, like I said, is a repeat of row 1. So we purl 1. Now then, and then we're going to knit this one, but we are going to go ahead and move it over here. And you're like, but there's an empty peg. No, we still need that. We need 2 on each peg except the first one. So then on this one, we will knit, move it here, and make sure your stitches are not as tight on these rows. And that would be 4. And then 5, because we're knitting 8. 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now then, so far we have got 2 on each peg like we're knitting. Now we're back to here. We purl 1. We repeat our from the asterisk. So we are going to purl. Didn't mean to bump the camera there. And move it over. And we're going, oh no, what am I going to do? Well, you can do that. That's fine. And in fact, you don't necessarily have to keep 2 on each peg. You just need to keep up with which stitch you're working at what time. 3, let's see, that was 2. This one's 3. 4. 5. Move that on over. 6. 7. And 8. Now, our last purl. And you could still work it to where you can get it back to the, but it will always be worked the same way. You will just count your stitches and not your pegs. There. Now then, that's the end of row 4. Rows 5 and 6 are the same. You will knit them in that same manner. Purl 1, knit 8, purl 1, knit 8, purl 1 across. And then back again. And then we will get to row 7. Row 7 is exactly like row 3. So just go ahead and back it up. Back up the video. Rewatch row 3 to help you if you need with row 7. And then, of course, rows 8 through 10 are a repeat again of row 1. So, let's work that. Rows 5 and 6 as row 1. Repeat row 3. If you need help, back that up. And then work 8, 9, and 10, repeating row 1. And then we will meet back up for row 11. Now then, I have worked rows 5 through 10. And now we're ready for row 11. Okay, so row 11 is the other cable row, because there's 2 cable rows, but they're each repeated twice. So we are going to purl that first stitch again. And while all of the cables will be worked in the same manner as before, they're in a different place. So I will go ahead and walk you through row 11 as well. So after we purl 1, we've got a cable for front. And of course, the cable for front is worked over 4 stitches. So we skip the first 2. Place that one on the needle, cable needle. And then the the next one, which would be the 4th stitch, and place it. Now we will knit this stitch, which we can put over here and hold, and then this stitch, the 2nd stitch, and then when we put them over here, we will put this one first, and then that one last, because that's the last one we knit. And then we are going to put these onto this peg. So this was the 4th one, and it now becomes the 2nd. We'll just place that one right here for now. And then this one was the 3rd one, and now becomes the 1st. So let's move that one back on top of this one, because this is the order that they were knit. This one was knit first, and then this one, and you can tell when you go to tighten them up if you've got them on there right, because you tighten up the cable 4 fronts at the end after they're knit, and of course the cable 4 backs, you tighten them as you go. And then there. So we've got our front done. So this one will be our back. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can always tell where they're at in relation to where your working yarn come off of your last stitch. So we are going to take our first 2 stitches for the cable 4 back, place them on the cable needle, and hold them to the back. Now then, bring our working yarn between the cable needle and the peg. We're going to knit the 3rd stitch. It will now become the 1st. And the 4th stitch, which will become the 2nd. Go ahead and tighten those up like I said. Bring that working yarn back to the front. Now then, we are going to put these back on in the manner that we took them off, and place them. Do it however you find is easiest to get them off that cable needle and back on the peg. So that one, if it doesn't slide all the way up that shaft, and then this one. Now then, we will knit these 2. So this one was the 1st. It now is the 3rd stitch, and then the 2nd stitch that was on the cable needle becomes our 4th stitch. Now we purl one. Now if you get confused about which one is the purl, if you flip that over and it looks like knit stitches running down the back, that's your purl stitch. So they're real easy to spot. So you purl it, and then place that over here. Now then, we are ready to work our next cables over our next 4 stitches. And since this is row 11 or row 15, then we will do a back, cable 4 back first, or next. So we place the first 2 stitches on our cable needle, bring that there. We are going to go ahead and move that 3rd stitch over, tighten it up, and then the 4th stitch over, tighten it up. Now we are going to put these back on this, not back on this peg, onto this peg. And try not to drop any stitches. Believe me, I have done it. It does happen. And we get that one back on here. And then we get what was the first one back on here for our third. And then we knit them. And we will just go over one like that. So it'll be that third one there. And then that one. Now then, we are to our final on this row, our final cable of a cable for front. We will slip or skip, but we will move this one over. And we will knit the third one. If you don't want to get confused there, you can take this one off and place this one under it. And then we will knit our fourth stitch, place it on the cable needle that's trying to get away from me. Now then, hold it to the back so that your working yarn goes between the stitches and the pegs. Now then, but we're going to go ahead and move this one over since it's not in line. It's not the first one, it's the second. So we come over here, we knit this one first. And then this one. And then we will go ahead and pick both of them up and move that first one in under. So that, like I said, they will go in order of how they were knit. So, this one, see, and if you pull them apart, you can see which one's which. So, hold this one while you place the first one that was knit on here, and then the second. Like I said, it seems confusing, and if you can have a different way of putting the stitches on here, or holding them, or whatever, that makes it easier for you, just go ahead and do that. Make it easy for you. So we're going to tighten that one. We're going to tighten this one because it's next. If you need to, pull it off the peg and then cinch that one up. Put it back on the peg. Tighten up the third one that was knit. And then the fourth one that was knit, and tighten that one on up. And then you will purl that last stitch. Now then, that was row 11, so you still need to knit or work the row 1 again, purl 1, knit 8, purl 1, knit 8, purl 1 for rows 12, 13, 14. Then you will repeat this row for row 15, and then row 16 is one more of row 1 of the purl 1, knit 8, purl 1, knit 8, purl 1. And then once you get that done, you have made one repeat, because your stitch pattern is worked over those 16 stitches. And then you will work those 16 stitches for the number of times that's in the pattern. And then once all of that is done, I will meet back up with you to show you how to finish it off, to bind off, and to assemble it for the headband with the elastic. See you then. Alright, I just finished my 8th repeat. 8 repeats should get you approximately 20 to 21 inches. And then now, we are ready for the bind off. Once we finished our last row of our last repeat, you will see I still have, if you've been following like I was doing it, 3 stitches on this peg. It doesn't matter, okay? Because we will be binding off from right to left using the basic bind off, and those stitches are already stacked like you go anyway. What I like about the basic bind off is you can control your tension very easily with it. So when it comes to the basic bind off, I just use a U-wrap because of how you manipulate the stitches anyway. So you knit 1, you knit 2, you bring 2, you place it on 1, leave it loose. This is where your tension comes in at. Take the bottom over the top, put that 1 back on that next one, and you leave it loose. You leave it loose enough that you think, oh my goodness, that is going to be too loose. No, 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 no. It won't be. That's the little trick. Knit, second over the first, bottom over the top, keep it loose. Then we just go to that next one. Bottom over the top, this one to the next, bottom over the top. I said bottom over the top for the knit, and not there we go. Now then, you just keep on doing that, and only move this one over when you've got that peg empty. So once this peg gets empty, but you don't have to move it over as long as that peg is not empty. So actually, it cuts down time on your basic bind off as well. Knit, move over, bottom over the top, and then we move it back over. Now for this one with the 3, it'd be the same concept. Just knit that top one without trying to get anything from that second one. Move it over, keep that loose, flip it over, and then go to the next. Knit, bring it over, don't pull up your tension too much, there, move up. We don't move it back yet, come on now. See, it's habit. But, and it will try to come off because it will, and that's why you think it's too loose. So I knit that one, I bring it over, I pull bottom over the top, and then I come back over. Now then you just keep going until you get to the end. Now we are down to our last 2 stitches to bind off. So we knit, move it over, knit over, and then we knit. So see, it really is exactly the same as if we were doing with 1 stitch on each peg. Okay, and then now we are ready to secure that. So what we're going to do is one more time, like we're knitting it, then we are going to pull that through. Go ahead and leave yourself about, a good amount, probably 12 inches for seaming. And then we cut it, pull that through, and then we will, after we have cut our yarn, go ahead and pull that all the way through. That will secure that last stitch. And now it is all. Now we have our cast on edge. We have our bind off edge. We're going to lay it flat with the wrong side up. Bring those wrong sides together and then turn it where we can see it like this, the top and the bottom, so to speak. Now then, we're going to take our long tail that we saved from our bind off. We're going to thread our needle. Now, while you can use any type of tapestry needle, this one is a plastic, it's a larger, but this one is a blunt metal tapestry needle. So now we have our bind off. We will not be using those stitches there. We will be using the stitches above it. This is where we pulled that last stitch through. And then we were going to join it over here. So just go ahead and run that needle through that stitch right there. Now then, get your other towel out of the way. It would be okay to go ahead and weave that one in already. So now what we're going to do is we are going to seam the two together and make it look seamless, where there is no join. So what we do is we've got that run through there. We go back to the top, not there, but you see where that knit V is right here? We're going to bring our needle in under that V. Don't pull it too tight. And then we're going to come back down to here. And then we are going to find that first it's going to be upside down. Our V's up here are going to be at the bottom. Our V's down here are upside down. Now then, see, this one is our purl row here. And that was where we joined. So we're going to find that first knit like we did that other one. We're going to go through in under both of those. And then back to the top. We're going to find that next one. It will be this one right here. You can always find, I'm going to hold my thumb right there. You can find where you went through on that last one. It's right there. You go to the next one over. And then you come back to the bottom, V, upside down V, and then go through, and then back to the top. And you will continue doing that. You can go ahead and just snug it up just a little bit, but not completely, because what we're doing is we're working these to where it looks like there's knit stitches, joining them together. Kind of like a Kitchener, except you have your bind off edge and your cast on edge is going to be underneath. It will make a, it's not really a good one to use for seaming toes because of socks, because then it will create a larger ridge under there. So let's go back down to the bottom one, and we are going to find that next one, which is here, because these are going to be pulled slightly because of the cables. Just try to match it up stitch by stitch. If you need to, you can join multiple stitches, but see, the cast on is a little bit back up here, is a little bit snugger than my bind off because I snugged it up. Maybe I shouldn't have. And then back to the bottom. Since that's pulled out, see, you can see, there it is right there. See, not there, but right here. And I just pulled my tail out. we will do that again. Press it down and pull it through. And then back to the top. And it doesn't have to be perfect because this will be the back side of the there. So just continue on over until you get to the other side. Now we're almost to the other side. You will just keep doing those V's. And see, this is loose because of how the cables were finished at the end, and it has kind of a hole right here. So in order to draw that up, we will just bring that through there and then back down into there. Then you can just weave in your ends. Now we have it seamed. It isn't the prettiest of seams, but like I said, it also doesn't quite match up because of the number of repeats that was done. You would have had to have done a half of a repeat in order for the cables here to completely match up. And then you will see the other side where there is a larger ridge. So weave in those ends, and then we will be to finishing with the elastic. Now you can see this headband will fit perfectly fine on any adult size head with just as it is. So if you don't want to use the elastic, then that is fine. You don't have to, because it will fit just as it is. So let's measure. We have got twice the length of this. So I have got about 10.5 inches, which of course is 21 inches. So what we will need to do is we will need to cut 2 lengths of yarn that is 20 inches long. And you're going, wait a minute, why will it not be 21 inches? Because that is, we're going to cut our length an inch shorter than what this is, because it will stretch. And since this will not have much of a chance of unraveling, we will not be sewing it, you know, having a large seam allowance on it. So let's go ahead and measure. So I've got it here at 0. And I have my thing upside down. So let's turn it. And when it is at approximately 20 inches, which is right here, I'm going to hold that. I am going to just cut. Now then, instead of having to measure again with my tape, all I'm going to do is I am going to line up my ends, and I am going to cut the second the same as the first without stretching. And there. Now we are going to thread it through here. Now we are going to take one of them. We're going to find our seam. We're going to go in here. Go in on the wrong side. We're going to bring it through there and then back through there. So basically, our elastic will go through the in the middle of the O's and behind the X's. So then you will skip that X, look for that next, bring it through, and then back to the back. And just keep threading that around until you get, without completely pulling it through. So there. And there. Cinch it up some. And it might not hurt just to make it look a little bit gathered for a while. That way you're not pulling it all the way through on the other end. So you bring that and then through there. So keep going all the way around until this first one is completely threaded through all of your circles. Now we are back at this last one. We will go through it. And then back down right at the seam. Now, go ahead and just let that bunch up for now because we're going to need those ends. See? But we do want it to lay flat. See, so make sure that when you sew, you've got it overlapping and it is flat. It's not twisted. And then make sure that all of that is through there as well, is not twisted in any way. Now, let's go ahead and run the second one through before we sew. Now, since if you need to as well, you can go ahead, you can take a safety pin just to make sure that they will not come undone. Just lay it like that, like you're going to sew it. Run that safety pin through there. Just to hold it to keep them from going through while you do this other one. So, we're back at our seam. Now this side is the X's. So the X's side will be a little bit longer on the bottom side. But we will get our second piece of elastic. Same thing, find that first of our O's and then bring it on through. Pull it on up, skip our X, go to our next O, bring it through, and continue all the way around. Okay, now I've gone through that last, see, and then there's no more until that first one. So if you're not a seamstress, you can buy a pack like this, or you can buy one of those just little mending kits that's got the little cute little spools, and it also comes with a little needle threader and needles in it and what have you. Now, you do not necessarily have to match your thread in particular because it's going to be hidden underneath the headband. But if you're like me, you might want that to match. Go ahead and thread your needle, not your end. You are going to just overlap this about 1/4 of an inch. Do it the same on both sides. And we're just going to do a simple sewing it together. So we're just going to go in the front, through the back, and we're going to go across. See, it's just, if you've never sewn anything, it's not that hard. Just take your stitches back and forth from the front through the back, Since that is overlapped, we did that because instead of putting them together in a different way to keep it flat. I'm sorry, I keep trying to get it out of the frame. And just go across just like this until you get to the other side. Now you might want to, on occasion, well, keep that from going through there. Whenever you get over, keep your stitches small, and whenever you get over to the other side, just tug on it a little. See how tight you've got your stitches. If you want to, you can whip stitch around the edge. So bring it so that it will wrap around the edge. And then that will help keep that tighter, and then start going back in the other direction. So technically you will have two seams. You'll go one way and then you'll come back the other. And to make it stronger, because with elastic you will want it to be as strong as possible on your seam, your stitches. So just once you get back to the other side, then just knot it off and trim your thread, and then do the other side. And then that's all there is to sewing your elastic. Now that I have both of these done, I will just go ahead and turn it wrong side out, and I will just pull it like that until it is gently pulled like it needs to. And there you go. You have got a nice headband. It could be used as an ear warmer with elastic and cables and hugs and kisses.